Good evening and welcome to Warrior TV, the voice of the mental health warriors. I'm Kerry Burr, the Human GPS, and I am joined this evening by a very, very interesting lady, Laura Mazzotta, and we'll be back with you just after. Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
No, you're more than welcome. I've been looking forward to this chat ever since Adam asked me to come and have you on the show this evening. So let's get started. You'd like to just introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. So my name's Laura Mazzata, and I'm an Akashic therapist and Reiki Master. I've been a therapist in New York, about an hour north of the city, for about 20 years. And about 6 years ago, I got really, really dangerously ill with sepsis. And I only got so far in the medical community with recovery. And so I started looking for alternatives to healing. And I found Reiki first, and then I found the Akashic records. And when I found the Akashic records, every time I was in that space, I wouldn't have any symptoms. And then when I would close it, I would feel super energized. And I started to notice changes in the people around me and in my clients. And I just couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore. And I decided that it felt like a responsibility to share these alternative modalities with people, because I just knew that it was the most efficient and effective way of accessing healing, especially with patients I'd seen for a long, long time and who would get frustrated with doing all the traditional techniques.
Yeah, it's I find the whole Akashic Records thing absolutely fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we were having our little chat just before we came on live here, and it is something that I would love to be able to delve into a lot deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So explain how you actually got into the Akashic therapy.
Sure. So I had been seeking out naturopaths and healers when I was going through my recovery, and Reiki provided me with a lot of soothing. It felt like I was being held. It was so comforting, and I loved it. Same thing with meditation. You know, it really provided me that resilience as well, and I would feel better when I would meditate. But then I had a friend of mine who had been just exploring a lot of different energetic modalities, and she talked about the Akashic records. And I said, what are you doing now? Like, come on, you know? And so I started looking into it. And then I stopped for a while because it just seemed like another thing. But my soul kept getting tugged to it, even though it didn't make conscious sense to me. And my brain was still in the mental health box. So I was just like, this doesn't seem logical, you know? And finally, eventually, it was so funny because I remember when I first signed up for a program for the Akashic Records, and I was literally like resentfully like, here's my money. Fine, let's do this. Like, they won't stop bothering me. Clearly, I need to do something about this. And so I started learning and going into that space. And even though it didn't make sense to me yet, and I wasn't fully on board, the results spoke for themselves. Like, that's the thing, you know? And so I just kept going into that space, even though I wasn't really getting a lot of information and didn't really understand how it operated. I just kept going back to it because I could see the changes. And even my husband was like, I don't know what you're doing and it makes no sense, but keep doing it because you're so much happier. You have so much more energy. You're healthier. And it was just mind blowing to me. It was a completely different world, and it opened up this awareness and opportunities that I really just didn't even know existed. And so then I started to just play with it and learn how the energy interacted with my energy and how energy works. And I found that when I would channel from this space, when I was sitting with clients, I would be able to shoot to the core of what was going on with them very quickly and pinpoint it right away. And then we would heal it, and they'd be like, oh my goodness. You know, it was like I was reading their minds. So So I shifted and I did both for a while, and I was getting burnt out. So I also realized that a lot of what I was offering to people, all my responses had to do with the energetic and the spiritual. So it didn't feel like I was being authentic to show up with these traditional therapy strategies, because I knew they were just a band-aid approach at that point.
Wow, yeah. It's that's interesting you should say that, because I've I was told a long time ago that I was able to be a healer.
Mm,
And I do quite frequently feel the circles in the middle of my palms getting very hot.
mm,
Um, and sometimes it's when I'm on my own, so I know that somebody somewhere, probably somebody that I'm close to, needs some healing.
yeah.
Or it's, when I'm actually physically with somebody, and it happens again, and obviously the same thing. But I've never actually been shown how to, or taught how to use it.
Mhm.
Um, Now my dad has done energy healing, spiritual
Mhm.
healing, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And the very first time he did it, he was exhausted afterwards,
Yeah.
because nobody had actually really told him how to do it properly. So although he'd been channeling the energy through him, he'd also been allowing his own energy to be given away as well.
Yes.
So I can imagine that it does get pretty tiring. But I presume that going through all the Reiki
Mhm.
training that you've gone through, that you would be taught how to do that
Yeah,
safely.
you know what? It's funny because I actually really like to use Reiki in the Akashic records. I mean, I sometimes I use it on its own, but
Mm.
I mean, at this point, I'm pretty much connected to the records all the time. So it's like always both. But the reason is because Reiki is this very soft, gentle, feminine, loving, caretaking, soothing energy. And the Akashic records are more of this like masculine structured, holding space. Like they'll give you direct answers and like direct feedback and protocols and things that you can do in terms of steps in your life. And so I like having them both together because it's that balance, like when I'm in Reiki, I don't feel fully, I love it and I can sink into it, but I don't feel fully held and like empowered. So I like having both because then I get that soothing, but then I also get that momentum going, you know? And the reason it helps me so much is because when you open someone's Akashic record, you can close it, which is automatically a boundary, right? So it's like not going to get sucked from me because I'm closing their record now. So we're both sustained. Does that make sense?
That it does make sense, yes. But I am going to ask you to elaborate a bit more on and explain what this Akashic record is, because I know that we each have them,
Yes.
but I'm not fully conversant with what they actually are.
Sure. So I'm a very visual learner. And so I like to describe it as a spiritual library in the clouds. So you can picture in the clouds, there's this huge library with an infinite number of books. And there's a book on every single soul that's ever sparked into existence. And the librarian is basically the angels and the guides and loved ones who have passed, things like that, right? They kind of work there and they protect everything and keep it safe. And then when we open your record, it's like we have the book of your soul from the time it first sparked through past lives, if you believe in those, this life and future lives. And then it's like Google for the soul. Like any question that you want an answer to, it could be health issues, relationships, money, career, where you want to go in your life, next steps. You just ask that question and you're going to get information that you are ready to integrate at the time. They're not going to give you something that's really going to overwhelm your system. And this is why I love doing this as a therapist, because the number of times that people would come in suicidal or self-injurious, and it's always like that dance of wanting to really have that bold conversation about their safety at the same time that you don't want to activate something that makes them more unsafe, right? And that's what we're taught so much in graduate school, is to how to navigate that line, and in our training as well on the job. And so what I love about this is that you know that what's coming forward is exactly what they need at the time. Like, it's very safe for them. And I'm not making that decision. God, the universe is making that decision. And that's better, because although I'm very good at what I do, I'm not as smart as divine intelligence. And they know, they know this person's soul much better than any human could, you know? And so you get that really beautiful insight.
Yeah, we are a bit restricted, aren't we, as in having the human experience?
Yes, exactly. But it's nice because it's this library of infinite information. And
Yeah.
so, you know, and I like to visualize it that way, but really the Akashic field exists around us at all times. There's information around us at all times. And it's just being able to kind of pull that out of the field, which
Right.
is it takes practice.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's absolutely fascinating. You know, being able to sort of access that library of all my past existences, you know. And I know there are people out there that don't believe in past lives. I do. I personally do. I have done for most of my life. It was an environment that I was kind of brought up in, although I didn't realize it when I was very young. I was sort of a young teenager when I found out about it properly. And it just kind of sparked my curiosity even further. So, but it's I'm going to ask a question, and please forgive me if it sounds a bit ignorant, but going through those Akashic records and pulling out different bits from past lives, is that what some people might call past life regression?
It can be. So you can pull information from past lives, especially if you're seasoned in reading the Akashic records, without going through a regression. I very, very rarely go through a full regression with people. If I'm drawn to, I will. But a lot of times what will happen is they'll bring forward something, whether it's anxiety or OCD or psychosis or something. And basically what we're doing is we're searching in the Akashic records to determine what the origin point of this is. And then once we find that origin point, we send healing to it. We gather a context for what was going on at the time so that this person has an understanding, because a lot of times, especially in the mental health system, people blame themselves. You know, they blame themselves for having whatever symptoms they have, and they think that there's something really deeply flawed about them, you know? And it's like, well, this came from somewhere. Let's understand it. And so we're gathering information, we're kind of putting it together as a puzzle piece in the whole, in creating the whole puzzle and the whole picture, you know? And so you can say, I have an intention to discover where my anxiety came from and intentionally go back into a full-on past life regression that's very, very detailed and understand the whole unfolding. And there's a lot of value in that. I actually consider past life work to be the deepest form of healing. So you can do that for sure, but it's not always required. Sometimes it's just like gathering a quick bit of info, sending a little healing, and that's only the context you need. So it kind of depends on the situation.
It's all right. There's more than one reason why I've asked that question. It's I've kind of I've got a couple of bits kind of going on with myself, and I've been aware of them all my life. And although on the one hand they're not a major issue on a daily basis, they can be a major issue, and I've always been fascinated with past life regression as well. So we could well be having another conversation away from here. But it's interesting listening to you explaining it all. And when you were saying about people that are coming to you with things like anxiety or some kind of psychosis or depression or whatever it is, and they're blaming themselves for those feelings. I'm trained in NLP to master level. To master level. And I found it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I've been fascinated with what makes us tick as individuals all my life. Yeah. You know, I'm a bit nosy like that.
I'm right there with you.
But I've always known that I wanted to help people. I haven't always known in what capacity, but I've always known that I've wanted to help people. So when I did stumble across NLP, it was like, wow, this sounds amazing. And so, of course, doing that. So I've also trained as a coach and a hypnotherapist at master level. But the one that's really fascinated me out of all of it is the timeline therapy.
Oh, I love timeline therapy.
And it's amazing. It's amazing how many people I've taken through timeline who've like, no, I don't believe in past lives. And then when you ask them about, the first event, which, if you were to remember, did it happen before, during, or after your birth? And they go, oh, before. Okay, so it before, that's good. Was it passed down through the generations, or was it a past life or past life? And you think, but you don't believe in past lives. But he's coming from somewhere deeper than just their conscious mind, their conscious memory. And I've never, I'm not dismissing the fact that we have subconscious minds or unconscious minds, whatever you want to call them. But I do wonder how much of that is being fed through from source. How much of it have we actually brought through with us from a previous life? So this is why past life regression, whatever you want to call it, Akashic therapy, I find it absolutely fascinating.
That's why I love Brian Weiss so much, because he was a psychiatrist and he wrote Many Lives, Many Masters. That was one of the first books that I read regarding this topic. And, he was convinced because of a client of his, like he did not believe in any of this stuff. But then he said every time I would take her into hypnosis, she would end up going back to a different time. And the details she would bring forward were uncanny. And he said, after seeing her just a handful of times, she made a believer out of me. And he shifted his entire career because of that one patient, because he would take her into hypnosis and it would happen. And he was just like, this is ridiculous. There's no way. No. And then it was undeniable to him. And I just think it's so cool that he was able to learn that through experience and be open enough, to allow that to kind of shift things for him.
Yeah, it is absolutely fascinating. And the more people I speak to, as I've got older, I've discovered that the more people I speak to, the more open they are, the more receptive they are to the possibility.
Yes.
That they are very much more open-minded. Whereas once upon a time, it was either they believed in it or they didn't. And if they didn't, 9 times out of 10, they'd kind of take the mickey.
Yeah.
So my dad did kind of say to me, look, you've got to be careful what you say to people and who you actually speak to about it, because there aren't a huge amount of people out there that are actually accepting of these kind of beliefs.
And what's cool though, is that you don't have to believe in them for it to be effective. Like I can do a past life regression. Like when I teach an Akashic immersion program that teaches you how to read the Akashic records and heal at all the layers and all that stuff. And so one of the things that we do is I teach them how to run past life regressions and to do them for themselves.
Wow.
And there's been a handful of clients within that program in the past who have been like, I'm not sure if I believe in this, And I said, it doesn't matter, because then what do you believe? You believe that you're using your imagination to access information to help you heal. So regardless of their belief, the changes unfold, because what happens when we use our imagination? We expand our intuition, we access our subconscious mind, we shift our programming. And so what's cool is that they find enormous benefit regardless of whether they believe. And that's what I love about it, because in so many of the spiritual modalities, you do want to be invested and really be, a believer in it for that change to unfold. But in something like this, it does its job no matter what.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing, absolutely fascinating. We've got some people are putting stuff in the comments. We'll read a few of them, really. Right, let's go back up. What have we got? Right, Adam's watching us. Robert Brooker, hi both. Robert is actually saying that sometimes you need to die to the old you to see what is all around you. I think that's very true.
Yeah, it's so funny because I was just talking to a client about that in my immersion program the other day, because she was talking about these recurrent dreams she was having, and so we were getting information from the records on their relevance and what they were bringing forward for her, and it was very clear that she was going through an ego death. And that doesn't mean that her ego is dead. It means that she's shedding a layer
Yeah.
of her ego that was conditioned or connected to a certain identity or a certain version of who she was, and she was ready to kind of step into a greater level of sovereignty. And that requires sometimes not releasing those old relationships or who you were necessarily, but just being able to say, okay, I know what purpose that served, and I'm kind of ready for my next level. And so I'm going to weave that in to my journey, but I'm also not going to live inside of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, brilliant. Brilliant.
Cool.
So we have a question actually from Adam. He'd like to know, good question as well, because I was going to ask you myself, where did the title Confidence Queen come from?
Oh, that's awesome. I love that you're asking me that question, because it's a very personal question, because I just recently switched that over, like in the last handful of months.
Okay.
Because for me, I was always the people pleaser, the perfectionist, right? The one who was like, oh, I don't want to upset anybody or offend anyone. And, even with my clients, I would be, kind of walking on eggshells a little bit sometimes, like, I want to make sure I don't set them off. And so for me, it's being able to say, I totally fully appreciate who I am. And when I step into that empowered version of me, then I'm being really authentic and I'm saying whatever comes into my mind. And it's very liberating. It's very liberating. And the level of liberation that I've been able to expand into is honestly something I never imagined was even possible. Like, what I had said to myself was, I'm just an anxious person. Like, that's just who I am. It's how I'm wired. I'm just going to be an anxious person for the rest of my life. Like, and I was fine with it. Like, I was fine with it. This is just who I am. And it's cool. Like, I've learned to work with it. It's fine. But then when I entered this world and started doing this work, I was like, oh, wait, I get to decide. Like, I get to decide and I get to shift it. I don't have to own this anymore, because I started doing this work for my physical health, but then my anxiety went away and I was so much more confident and had so much clarity. And I was like, oh baby, this is the soup to nuts, And so that's really what I'm passionate about, because I do really believe that healing has a place, but I do know that if we are confident in who we are and we're empowered, then we can do anything, whether that's healing, whether that's creating something, whatever.
Absolutely. That's wow. It is. It's like a it's like a eureka moment, a revelation, isn't it? When you suddenly actually realize, you know what, all these people have been right all along. I can decide for me. It's entirely down to me. And if I want to believe that I'm short and fat and in need of a haircut, that's up to me.
And the thing is,
you know what? I'm perfectly imperfect. I am a being having a human experience, and I am completely genuine. And yes, I'm confident in me. Nobody else is like me, and I'm not like anybody else.
Exactly. That's what I say. Like, I say the weirder you are, the better friends we will be, because I absolutely love that uniqueness, because that's what I feel is what we need on this planet, is like that collaboration. Like my son, right? My son's very ADHD. And so it's like, yeah, you're amazing at this and I suck at it. And so you go do that and I'm going to go do this. And guess what? We're going to rule the world if everybody has the opportunity to dive into their little unique niche without it being wrong, and that we appreciate each other for it. Because then I don't have to do the crap I don't want to do, and vice versa, And so I think that the more we can have confidence in our uniqueness and bring that forward and preach it, the more other people feel validated.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I'm totally with you 100% on that. That is just so spot on. I've never heard it explained like that before. So absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. Right. Let's go down a little bit further. What have we got? Adam, bless. For those that don't know, what is different between timeline therapy and aromatherapy?
Oh, those are totally different. So, yeah,
Totally.
so aromatherapy is really using essential oils or even flower essences, things like that, to be able to activate your senses. I mean, it really activates the olfactory nerves. And it also, if you put it particularly on the bottom of your feet, that's the most porous area of our skin. And so it actually soaks into, they're molecules, they're energetic molecules that have a certain structure to them that then interact with ours and can shift our energy. So people love aromatherapy is very soothing, it's very activating, it's very healing, but that's really using the senses to be able to assist our physical bodies and our emotional bodies for healing. Whereas timeline therapy is really taking a timeline, and you can be intentional with it, or you can be really general and broad, and you can basically say, okay, I'm going to map this. Timeline therapy is kind of like mapping out whatever it is going on with you. So it's like, okay, well, let's use anxiety again. Like, I have anxiety. Okay, so I'm going to start here. I'm going to go backwards. I know my mom had anxiety. I know her mom had anxiety. And then you just tune in and you keep going backwards as far as you can go to try to get a story and an understanding of where this came from. So you're kind of mapping out this thread that's connected at all. And if we send healing to where we first saw this in our timeline, and we kind of rope those ancestors in to our healing, and we do it collaboratively, not only do you not feel alone, but you're healing for yourself generations backwards and generations forward. So it's
Yeah.
awesome.
It is absolutely awesome. I mean, I absolutely love the timeline therapy technique. You know, it's one of my favorite tools to use. It's right what you say with the aromatherapy, though, and when you were mentioning about those that don't know what olfactory is, it's your sense of smell.
Yes.
But putting it on the soles of your feet, because the soles of the feet, I mean, we're kind of going into reflexology a little bit here, aren't we? But there are certain things for all you young mums out there that have got little babies that won't sleep. Get some essential oil. Obviously, be very, very careful with it. You've got to be careful with how much you use, but rub it on the soles of their feet, and it does help. It really does help.
Yeah, you just have to dilute it, especially for babies. You have to dilute it. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay. Jessica Suzanne Dugas is here.
Hi, Jess.
Watching, yeah. Robert, I've learned that being the reason anyone I've interacted with feels a little better about themselves because of our interaction. This is one of the very best feelings in the world.
Yeah. And you know what? I love that, because that's a really beautiful way to tap into this concept that you don't have to say anything or do anything or be a certain way or act a certain way in order for people to be drawn to you and to like you. To realize that literally just by physically existing, like, your energy field that surrounds you is going to impact people. People are going to feel your energy and they're going to be drawn to you. Even if you say, well, why would this person seek me out for this? Or why would this person want to hire me for that? Or whatever, I'm not that good, or I'm not this or that. None of it matters, right? It's just, it's how you're presenting, and it's how they're feeling connected. And you want to empower them by being able to say, wow, like, what is it that you saw in me that feels like it really resonates with you,
Yeah.
And that assists them too with being able to identify what it is that's meeting their needs, in your field. And it's just really cool to start to grasp and really internalize that concept of just existing, I'm affecting people. And that's why it's so cool that when we heal ourselves, we heal other people without having to do anything or say anything, right? Because my vibration is changing. So you can feel the different waves of energy that are moving in and out of my field, and as they interact with yours. And so just like if we play a sound, and I'm here and I'm playing a sound and you're across the room, you're going to hear it, because that sound that's coming from whatever I've created is interacting with the airwaves and then moving its way over to you. That's what happens with energy. So yeah, it's really cool.
It's interesting that you should say that with the sound, because I've yet to experience a Tibetan bowl sound bath or a gong sound bath. I absolutely want to experience that, but I've grown up having an absolute love of music, listening to it, creating it, and it's got to be played at a certain things have to be played at a certain volume. And the balance, the bass and the treble and the mid range has got to be just right, and I mean, both my parents were musical. My mum learnt to play the piano when she was a young girl, although she didn't continue with it. My dad has always had an amazing singing voice, and he loves the male tenor singers out there, and when you always knew when he was home on his own, because walking home from school, if you could hear somebody like it was Mario Lanza back then, blaring down the road, you knew that Dad was home and Mum was still out at work. But you see, Dad and I had this similar thing, that when we're listening to something that we really, really love, it's got to be quite loud. And the reason for being loud and having the decent sound quality as well is because we both feel it inside.
Yes.
If we don't just hear it, we actually feel it. We can feel it stirring our energy, and it really does something to us,
Absolutely. And it also, I mean, that also is just such a sign too that you're so empathic, right? Like you're such an empath, because you can feel that energy so palpably. But we all can, especially, well, everybody can, especially when you train yourself to it, and you become really accustomed. I remember when it's funny that you're talking about gong, because my gong is sitting right here next to me. And I remember when I got my first gong bath, and I literally came out of that and I was like, now I know why they call it a bath, because it felt like it was pouring over me.
Wow.
It was crazy. I've never felt that sensation in my life, that I was literally laying there in front of the gong, and it felt like these huge waves were peaking and crashing through my entire body, all the way through my toes. And one of the things that I struggled with after I got sepsis was leg pain. And so when this happened, I was like, oh, baby, I'm getting me a gong, because I was like, this is for my leg, because I could feel it just waving through, and it makes my legs feel amazing. And so I knew that it was going to be a really awesome healing tool for me, because it's very palpable. You do feel like you're being washed clean.
Oh, I need to go and have one now.
Yes, you do.
Not right now, but if I could, I would. But
yeah. I actually did a gong bath reel on my Instagram. So if you want a little bit of a taste, you can just go there and look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. Yeah. That's fantastic. Robert's saying he does love zipping up that vibrational scale a few times, interacting with another who naturally would respond to my uplift with their uplift until we are both in the clouds and beyond. Means I have walked on the moon with Les Brown even. It's a wondrous thing. That sounds amazing.
That sounds like I take people through this journey. That's so beautiful. I love that how you're writing these out and being specific too, Robert, because it's just so palpable, But yeah, I love taking people on this journey where they kind of shrink to these little beings of light in their heart space, and they rise up to their soul star chakra, which is like right up here, like above your crown. And you hang out there with your higher self, and you go on little journeys together, and you heal, and you hang out with the angels, and it's that same kind of feeling. Oh, it just feels so good, because you're just rising up. And it's also sometimes people, this is where spiritual bypassing can come in. Sometimes people do that because they just kind of want to escape the human, and say, I don't want to deal with the humans anymore, or my human body, and I just want to escape, which is fine for like a brief period of time if that's your intention. But ultimately, it is so that we can consistently raise our vibration, so that we can incorporate both our human and our spiritual. We don't want it to be either or, because we're both. Absolutely.
It's I've got to say, I've got to absolutely agree with what Robert's putting here. He's basically still going on about the sound, and then he's saying so that you can be impacted, and it's a line of reasoning that allows you to make sense of having a pro do a custom audio install in your car. Oh yes, because it matters greatly. Yes, it absolutely does. The only thing that could overpower the sound of the open intake and deep bass exhaust note was the audio. No matter how loud the car was, the music was crystal clear and dominated all. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
It just feels like a sound bath, right? Like it feels like you're just sitting and you're just getting washed over.
Yeah.
You're deeply immersing yourself into this vibration, and it just feels so soothing. I love that.
Definitely. Oh, absolutely is. Yeah, absolutely is. Oh, dear me. Oh, how I'd love to have a sound bath right now. Anyway.
I got my bowls here too, Carrie. I could do it all for you.
Oh, wow. We'll have to connect.
I know.
So anyway, let's move on a little bit more, because you are an author.
Yes, I am an author. I have 2 chapters that I've authored in book collaborations. And it's funny because my team and I had decided to do a holistic mental health summit this year. And we really our intention was to raise awareness not only for practitioners of mental health and any healthcare practitioners for that matter, with being able to really think outside the box, outside of those traditional mental health techniques, and give them other tools, but also for those people who have either been to therapy for years and feel like they haven't fully gotten to what they desire out of it, or those people who say, I don't believe in therapy, or therapy sucks, or therapy doesn't work for me, and so they don't go. And I thought about it, and I was like, why not create a book to go along with this so that people have a tangible toolbox, right? Almost like a Bible of mental health tools to carry around with them, and that there's chapters on all sorts of different things. So when you run into this snag, open that chapter, you got your tool. When you run into that snag, open it up. And it's so beautiful because I have all these authors coming in. I'm still having authors join the project. It's going to be 25 authors, including myself, where we're talking about different tools and strategies and resources that are off the beaten path, not what you're going to read in a mental health textbook, but these are people who are experts, right? They are tried and true, these techniques with themselves, their clients, their loved ones, time and time again. And being able to offer this to people to have their hands on, in addition to following it up with a summit, because one of the biggest things is that people have trouble finding a good fit. And that's really the foundation of how much change you're going to have in the therapeutic world and the mental health world. And so it's beautiful because they're going to get exposure to really getting to know all these people and say, oh my gosh, I love that person's vibe. That's my person. And you're going to be able to find a person that you identify with that you can connect with. You could do sessions with them, or just read some of their content or something, and just start to, again, build your toolbox, because we're talking about empowerment again here, right? Coming back to, if I have this in my hands and I have all these resources, I can heal myself. I don't need to necessarily rely on all of these other people, or it's at least a starting point for those people who aren't wanting to go see someone, but know they need the help. Yeah. So that's really what that came from. And we're going to be publishing in October. So the writing starts in June, and I just can't wait. It's become a really big deal. And for me, it scared my human a little bit at the beginning. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. But source was very clear, about how much this was needed in the world. And I'm so glad I listened, even though I'm a stubborn human and I don't always listen. I'm so glad I listened, because it's taking on a life of its own, and it's really of service, and it feels not only relevant, but really powerful and intimate and expansive. And I just love it.
And it's so important, isn't it, for people to be able to find that one person that they connect with, as in like truly connect with, to be able to have that help. You know, I'm constantly told by other coaches that I speak with on a fairly regular basis, you know, you've got to know who your ideal client is. You've got to connect with your client. Okay, yeah, I get that. But they've also got to connect with me. And if they don't, it's not a problem.
Right.
But I know quite a few others that may be more suitable for them. Though these other people might have different tools to the ones I've got that would be more suitable for helping. And this is why I love I love this this idea of having all these authors in this book. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So many resources.
Right, exactly. And what's cool is that with each chapter, each author links to, there's a link at the end of each chapter that has additional resources for each person. And so it'll have a video teaching them how to do whatever it is, or it will be them adding things to the practice, you know, or just getting to know them a little bit more, what have you. So I love that it continues to extend and expand even after you've read the book, you know. And we actually invite people who purchase into a Facebook group that authors do trainings, and you can kind of connect and collaborate and just kind of hang out and chat. And it's really creating community too, which just feels really supportive.
That's amazing. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Wow. I'm kind of a little bit blown away, really.
Oh, it's so fun. I was blown away too when it dropped in from source, and I was like, no, thank you. Bye. And then they kept coming forward with it. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm doing this.
It is one of those, isn't it? I think when you kind of realize what's actually going on and you suddenly think, oh, no,
I know.
I don't want this life. This is not what I came here for.
Well, and it's funny because it was my first real experience of, because prior to that, I had been what we call co-creating with the universe, which is like, yeah, the universe gives me info. I have my own brain. We put them together and I make my path forward. Right. And so this is the first time that it was really for me, not even close to my agenda, but entirely forwarding source's agenda. And that was enormously humbling for me and so awesome, because I felt like I feel like I'm a full vessel of service in this project, like full on vessel of service. Like I am fulfilling source's mission for me on this planet, you know? And it's just so cool to feel the difference between the two, because I can still get feedback from them and make plans forward with me. But when I put my ego entirely on the side and just do everything that source tells me to do, it's a totally different feeling. And it's really cool. It's actually really empowering.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It's it does kind of it gives you a whole new outlook on everything, doesn't it? You know, your own perception, your own reality changes quite drastically sometimes.
It does, because you're not seeing the person. You're a soul seeing another soul, you know, and that's what the word namaste means. You know, the soul in me sees the soul in you.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that's really what we're meant to do, you know, is being able to see the soul in another person. And I love this story so much because I had this client, adore her. I saw her for a few years, and this was when I was transitioning over to energy work, and she was open to it. And so we were talking about what she wanted to do for a living, and she had a choice of two different things that she wanted to consider. And so based on all the information she brought forward and how she was feeling about it, and just knowing her for a while, we both decided, we were like, yeah, it seems to make sense for you to go this route, because that seems to be what you're being drawn to. And then we opened her Akashic records, and they were like, yeah, no, it's the other one. And so we were like, okay. And it was just so cool, because it was really that source can see you in a way that nobody else can.
Yeah.
And that when you can identify with that, you're getting that divine perspective on yourself, and that divine perspective on what this particular thing you're going through is meant for in the whole game of life, you know, and like ultimately where that's going to lead you to, even if it doesn't make sense now. And so I really love that we can access the divine to get that puzzle piece.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I'm still not certain of what my absolute overall purpose is for being here. I just know that what I'm doing is at least for now, it's the right path for me to take. I
Yes.
know that much. You know, I've learned how to trust my gut feeling, my intuition.
And you know what? I love that you said that, because that's enough, because some people will say, but they're like fixated on, I need to know my soul's purpose. I need to know my soul's purpose. And it's like, okay, I think that what you're saying is that you want to open up to guidance from the universe, and you want to allow that to guide you, because you also don't want your ego to get attached to, what does my soul purpose mean? You know what I mean? Because then you can rigidly follow that. It's actually better to appreciate what you just said, which is that being in the present moment, saying, I'm open to things unfolding differently if source guides me. And I'm not pigeonholing myself into saying, no, I can't do that because that's my purpose. That doesn't align with my purpose or whatever, and that's a very important part to bring up, because our egos get attached to just knowing the answer rather than just living it and going with the flow.
Yes, this is where I have kind of clashed with myself, if you like, on occasions. Because even my mum used to tell me I always wanted to run before I can walk. And certainly over the last few years, I've realised that I've got to slow down. You know, it's not a race. Life isn't a race. Because there is a finish line at some point, albeit a temporary one.
Right.
But I don't want to rush to get there, so I've got to learn to slow down and just take it a step at a time.
I know. And that's really irritating, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened when I got sepsis. I was like, thank goodness I got clobbered over the head with this, because I definitely wouldn't have listened otherwise. I definitely wouldn't have, because I was just been like, nope, I'm good. I got my practice. I got my family. Everything's good. My life's happy. I was very happy. I was very well adjusted, but I wasn't phenomenal like I am now, like I just didn't even know that that was accessible to me.
Yeah.
And so that's what's so cool. It's like, we can get really stubborn and get stuck in our heads, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I obviously I help a lot of people who do get stuck in their own heads. Which kind of brings me on to another question in some respects, because I think, we're all here trying to understand mental health as much as we are sort of raising awareness about it and looking to basically end the stigma of it and give people a safe space to come and talk if or when they want to or need to. I've been taught over the years that, I know that we all have mental health. Every single one of us, the same way that we have physical health. And to look after one is essentially, we've got to look after both.
Right.
So I think I probably know the answer to the question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because there's going to be somebody out there that doesn't know the answer to the question. So can you explain how living as you do, knowing what you know, knowing what I know, living as I do, how does that all fit in with the mental health arena? Or is that too general a question?
No, I'm just trying. I could go so many different directions with this. So I could probably answer this question for about 3 hours. So
Okay.
How does it fit in? I mean, it's multi-layered, right? It's multi-layered. And I really like to view this as, our physical bodies are the densest amount of energy. And so once something shows up in our physical body, like physical illness or pain, we know that it's already moved through the emotional field, because that's further out in terms of our energy field than the physical. And so it's really helpful to, yes, heal the physical body, but it's actually even more helpful to heal the emotional body and to heal the mental body. And both of those are really, really tied together with mental health, right? Because those are actually a step closer I mean, I'm sorry, so further from our bodies than our physical field,
Yeah.
obviously. And so when we can heal that, we're actually preventing physical illness.
Yes.
Because what we're doing is we're saying, all right, and the thoughts are even more important, right? I always tell my clients, we start changing the behavior first because that's the easiest to shift. Then it's the thoughts and the emotions follow. The emotions are always later, but they're all encompassed in it. And what's cool is that we can use our physical body and movement, even smiling, to communicate to our brain the messages that we desire to feel. So if I really want to feel vibrant and happy, I can put my body in a position or in movement that communicates that to my brain. And I can shift my thoughts. And the thoughts are not just, okay, I'm going to do some CBT, some cognitive behavioral therapy, or some DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, to shift my thinking and start to create new automatic thoughts. That's great, but it's still just operating in the mind. We also want to deeply immerse more into the subconscious because that's 95% of what's going on in our minds every day.
Yeah.
And that's deeper. And so this is what most people avoid, because when we kind of check things off the list for our mental health, instead of a deeper immersion. And that's why meditation's so cool. And this kind of work is so effective, because you're being called to really sit with each practice longer and deeper, and being held very safely, and establishing that, of course, before you do that, but allowing yourself to really sink into a space where some of that deeper change can occur. And that's the stuff a lot of people avoid because they're afraid of seeing the darkness that might live within. It's scary to them because they think, if I feel this way on the surface, how am I going to feel if I dig deeper? And that's why that safety is so important. And the Akashic records, I feel, are the absolute hands down safest place to do healing work, because you're not going to get anything you're not ready to integrate, and because you're really held by these divine beings. So I did that answer your question?
Well, yes. I mean, I followed all of that. I don't know if anybody else did, but I followed all of that. It's just making so much sense to me.
Yes. And this is the thing, just top level, when people would come into me for traditional therapy, they would come into me in desperation mode, right? Save me. You got to do something because I can't live like this anymore. And this is what happens to a lot of humans. You enter the doctor's office, you enter the therapy office after you have hit a wall and you're ready to pull your hair out, rather than being preventive. I think everybody should fricking do something, whether you go to coaching or therapy or connect with a mentor. It can be as casual as you want, but do it preventively. That's the most self-loving thing you can do. Because if you wait till you're at that point of desperation, then you're like grasping at straws and you're like doing all the things and all the skills and all the tools. And even if they might be really effective, you're coming from a space of, if this doesn't save me, what's going to happen? You know what I mean? And it's so important to bring them to a space of confidence, of like, the answer's there. The solution's there. It's always there. You're going to be totally fine. I 100% guarantee you're not going to feel like this forever, and being able to then guide them from there using whatever tools are going to communicate with the person the most, like some people are just not verbal people. They don't like to process verbally. And that's when we use the body. And that's when we use the energy and the voice and all of these things to be able to reflect these signals back to the brain and make change.
Absolutely.
I told you I could talk about this for 3 hours. I don't know if I'm making any sense right now. I'm just talking.
No, well, you're making sense to me. Let's put it that way. You're going to have to come back on.
Yes,
again.
I would love that. This is so fun.
That'd be awesome. Absolutely awesome. Yeah. No, I'm just listening to what you're saying, and I'm thinking, wow, this completely. I totally get where you're coming from with this, and it's like, yeah, I've experienced that myself. With my own stuff, and I won't go into it now because people have heard it before, and it's I don't want to bore anybody, but yeah, I have had similar experiences myself. It's very much a case of it's almost like waiting until the horse has bolted before you close the stable door, isn't it? And by which time it's a case of, right, yeah, I've got to do something about this now, because it's like very briefly, years ago, I had a nervous breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 24 hours of my life that I don't recall at all.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it woke me up.
Mm.
It took a few months afterwards, but it woke me up to what was going on around me, to how I was living my life, what I was allowing other people to do to me.
Right.
And it was like that light bulb went on, and I realized that, you know, those of my friends who'd been telling me for years, you've got to get out of there, and your life is only going to change when you make those changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that point that I woke up.
Mm.
What was that, about 15 years ago now? Yeah. So
I love that you're sharing that, because I remember when I first had sepsis and I was meeting with a therapist at the time, and she suggested, this was before I woke up entirely, and she was like, I wonder what the spiritual significance of this is. And I was like, you know what? There's no spiritual significance. I got sepsis. I was like so pissy about it. And she was 100% right. And thank goodness she planted that seed for me, right? Because it's true. Like, we don't necessarily want to go there. And it's scary to go there, because for me, it was like, if I took full responsibility for my experience, then that would mean that I did something wrong. And then I felt like a failure. And then I would blame myself.
Yeah.
Whereas actually taking responsibility for me now has become one of my biggest saving graces.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's, I mean, it is still easy on occasions to sort of, for a moment, place blame outside of yourself.
Right. Yes.
But in that moment as well, if you then take a step back and you think, whoa, hang on a second,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
I am responsible for the way that I've responded or reacted or behaved or whatever. Nobody else has forced me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that all of my own free will.
Exactly. And it's very liberating. It really is.
Oh, it so is. It so is. Laura, we're rapidly running out of time.
Yeah.
So we will have you back. I know, definitely. We've got
Wonderful.
to, absolutely got to. Thank you so much. I'm
welcome.
just going to do a quick bit of housekeeping once I found the the information. That's it. There we go. 8 p.m. tonight, everybody, is the next show where Anthea Morphitus will be welcoming an amazing guest on her show. So please do tune in at 8 p.m. Laura, thank you so much for being here today. What an amazing conversation.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. This was loads of fun. Loads of fun.
Brilliant. Excellent. We will definitely have you back on. Definitely have you back on. Thank you for those of you who have tuned in this evening, and we wish you a pleasant rest of the evening, and we will see you very, very soon.